Song review! No, I'm just kidding. This is song study. This is the first episode, so let's quickly go over the rules. So, 3 songs have been chosen today. Oh, you can already see the first one down here. But each song will be rated in 4 categories on a scale to 10. 1 is bad, 10 is really good. And we're going to go over each one. If you haven't seen the first episode that I made, well, I guess it's not really a real episode, but the introduction to the series, then I highly recommend that so you understand the categories a little bit better. But without further ado, I have some notes here. So the first one that we have here is House of Memories by Panic! At the Disco. This is off their 2016 album, Death of a Bachelor, which is actually probably one of my favorite albums in general. I was going to say Panic! At the Disco albums, but albums in general. I really like Panic! At the Disco, so it made sense to review a familiar song. So let's start with the first category, which is originality. I don't know if that looked good, but I hope it did. Anyway, some basics, house cleaning here, I guess. It changes tempo within the song, but overall it's about, I think I saw somewhere like 220 beats per minute, 4/4 time. But anyway, let's get to the originality about it. So first of all, the song, the lyrics has kind of a jazz with some hard rock influences on there, and some hip hop influences as well, which is something that is seen throughout the Death of the Bachelor album, which I actually really like. I think it sounds really well. So originality, it gets some points in that category for the style, but specifically the subject with the lyrics is actually pretty original. To get you kind of familiar, the lyrics are talking about a house of memories as a relationship that the writer, Brendan Urie, is experiencing, and he's kind of evaluating the relationship, how it's based off of past memories instead of other things. There's a lot of issues, I think, that kind of come up with talking about how the relationship is formed and how certain memories haunt them versus other ones are the ones that keep them in a relationship. I feel like a bad fan, but I recently figured out when researching this song that Brendan Urie was married, so this is talking about his now wife. It's kind of a mature topic because I almost feel like there's a tinge of evaluating a marriage and even contemplating stuff like divorce. So some other notable things, there's the metaphor of a house, which is a pretty common metaphor as far as describing a relationship goes, but it's kind of in a weird way. I at least personally didn't really catch on to the fact that it's about a relationship and the house represents the relationship. It's a very clean, solid sound. Everything's done really well. The chorus has a lot of energy and it's overall pretty tasteful. The snare has a few moments that just are really cool. The piano also has some cool moments. There's the tempo change. Yeah, so overall, we've decided on 7.5 for originality. We'll move on to complexity then. Like I said before, this is in 4/4 time, which is pretty basic, but it does have a tempo change, which is really nice. The bridge is very tastefully done, and it all wraps together very nicely. But what probably gets the most points is his voice. His voice goes in all sorts of different notes, going high and low, and it makes for a really nice dynamic flow of the song, the lyrics overall. Another thing that adds to the complexity is the complexity of the topics in the lyrics. The feelings that I think the writer's dealing with are very mature feelings for sure, and kind of going back over that, evaluating marriage and contemplating divorce and stuff like that. It's just some complex things. Anyway, to kind of move on, we gave it a 7 for complexity. So now purpose. We kind of talked about that quite a bit already. Mature, complex topics about relationships, divorce, marriage, settling down versus a lively honeymoon phase, which I think is something kind of important. And especially when it's tied to a real relationship that is in a marriage situation now, I think that it's a pretty genuinely written about someone and about the writer's experiences with a relationship and evaluating it and things like that. I think that we kind of went over all that stuff already. It got a 7.5 for purpose. So the last part is sound. Everything in the song flows very, very nicely. There's a good mix of different genres. Somehow it comes together in a very nice way that I think Panic! At the Disco always has been able to do very well. The drums are very like alternative, kind of very high energy, but they don't take up too much space. The guitar is really nice and tasteful. It's not too extreme, which I've heard critics say the guitar kind of is overpowering in other Panic! At the Disco songs. I think it's fine in this one at least. Like I said before, the vocals in this is just beautiful because Brendan Urie's voice is incredible and he uses all of it, which is a really good thing to do. The lyrics all flow very nicely. Even when I'm just reading the lyrics, you can hear the song, which I think is a really good thing. Otherwise, it has some really nice jazzy piano that has a really nice feel to it that matches the rest of the song. Overall, I think that it's a very well done as far as the production and just how it's written is very, very well done. All those tempo changes I was talking about, well, I think there's only a couple or something like that, but that's done very nicely. The bridge is solid. The chorus, I wanted to say, has a lot of energy, but it's not just cranking up the volume on the guitar to make that energy, which I thought was very nice. So yeah, it's a very strong song. So finally, for sound, it got an 8. Now we'll see the average, which, dang it, I didn't calculate the average before this. The average is a 7.5. Wow, look at that. All right, great. I totally didn't edit that out. Moving on to our next song here. So we have Dignity by New Politics, and it's not showing up. Hold on. There we go. It's off their debut self-titled album from 2010. They're a punk rock band from Denmark. We'll go with that. It's Danish. That's Denmark, right? Yes. Okay. Anyway, so it's a pretty classic punk rock song as far as the era goes. It's not very much like the old punk rock, but I personally like it. I was actually really surprised by how much meaning the lyrics had, but we'll get into originality first. So overall, it's pretty unique. There's not really too much to say. Punk is kind of intentionally simple, and so it's hard to review it in that kind of way. It's got a pretty cool riff, I guess, through it. The production of it has kind of a gritty sort of style, which I guess kind of matches it. There is keyboards, I think, in there, which is kind of cool. They've got kind of an aggressive vocal style during the verses, but then a very smooth chorus, which is really nice. A pretty actually cool bridge as well. So not too much to say as far as originality goes. Ended up getting a 6.5 out of 10 though, so it did pretty well for itself. Next up, we have Complexity. So first of all, with the lyrics, they are pretty mature and abstract. They're talking about big world issues, kind of as background there. They poke fun at the media for putting lies in specifically parents' faces, which in turn they give the lies to their children, and there's kind of a lot of playing off of that and a lot of criticism of, I think, especially the United States for selling arms and being involved in war just in general. So a lot of good old punk rock criticism of the government and society, which I thought was pretty nice. The rhymes are pretty simple, the chorus is pretty simple, but like I said, it's punk, so it's kind of done intentionally. Still very well done with the instruments and everything like that. Overall, it ended up getting a 6 for Complexity. Now on to Purpose. I talked about that a little bit, but it does a really good job of describing disappointment in both society, the world, the government, and also a little bit of yourself. I think that's kind of an interesting twist there, is that it still has some ownership of how these issues that arise in the world kind of come from yourself as well, and you contribute to that. It has some pretty good questions about what is the price of peace. There's topics about manipulation by the government and society. How I talked about how parents teach their kids lies and BS like that. And we're kind of all manipulated by hopelessness. So overall, it's a pretty deep subject and pretty abstract as well. There's a lot of truth into it, I think at least. They did a pretty good job with the lyrics on this one. So Purpose, it got an 8. And finally, for sound, I said earlier it's got a cool riff. Sounds like a classic kind of post-punk. I talked about how the verse is kind of nice and aggressive versus the chorus being a little bit more smooth. Overall, that brings us to an 8 for sound. Oh, and then I didn't calculate the average before, so what do we got here? About 7 and 0.125 for the average here. Moving on. Up next we have Thank You Next by Ariana Grande. This one was a little bit out of my comfort zone for me. I personally don't listen to the radio or pop music very much in general, but this has been a pretty big song, so I thought I might as well review it to get those clicks. I'm just kidding. That was not the reason. I just wanted to review a song that I wasn't very comfortable with. I think a lot of you know about this one. Thank You Next. It's a lot about Ariana Grande's exes and how they've influenced her to basically be a better person. So we're going to go over this starting with the originality, of course. So she talks about her breakups by name, which I thought was a little bit interesting actually, considering how much publicity they get usually. But something that was actually pretty cool was that she was a lot more optimistic about the breakups and more mature about it in the songs. Like if you compare it to Taylor Swift, I feel like overall the song has a much more mature kind of feel to it. And there's also a pretty good message about kind of loving yourself in that. But with that, it gets really repetitive. I cannot tell you how repetitive the song gets. I couldn't listen to it as much as the other songs just because it doesn't have any replay value. Kind of to move on here, let's see. Oh, another thing, the sounds and instruments, they're super uninteresting. They're just like pop stock sounds, like pretty uninteresting sounds to me. Nothing too crazy. Has a pretty early hook, which has kind of plagued a lot of pop music. There's a lot of processing and post-editing, so it sounds kind of, synthetic a lot of times. And then there's triplets throughout the verses especially, which has proliferated through pop music. Did I say that word right? I don't know. But it's become very abundant in pop music, which it's a strong technique to use triplets in your songs, but I feel like it's just become overused, that I can't really give songs that have triplets points anymore because so many songs have it now. It was an original idea at first. I'm not really sure who first started doing it. That kind of started the whole trend, but I'll go over as well. So triplets in music is when you have three notes within the span of what usually would be 2 notes. So a lot of times you'll hear it in especially rap songs. It's that flow that goes na 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 da 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 na na na. So when you hear that, you're hearing triplets, which they're really powerful when you use it regularly. Like here, go check out shoot, I don't want to show you the wrong one. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So there's the song called Devil's Bleeding Crown by Volbeat. It's a hard rock / metal song, so some of you might not like it, but there's triplets in throughout some of it, but You know what? I wonder if I can just play it. I don't know how the sound quality is going to be. This is just from a website I use called Songster. We'll play a little bit. So I'll point out where the triplet is here in a second. Right there. Right there. Right here. Right here. Right here and not there. So you hear that kind of quick 3 tapping. That is what a triplet is, and that is a good example of when it's used. Anyway, we got super off topic, which is totally fine. But anyway, we'll get over to the complexity. Like I said before, it gets really repetitive. It's a pretty basic beat. The triplets we've talked about a lot. Pretty synthetic. Has a really early hook, which usually means that they don't really care about the verse and just want to get to the chorus. At least to me, that's what it kind of feels like when the hook is rushed out. But there are some good things. It talks about some pretty complex feelings about love, hate, pain, and what is this? Growth. Aha. There we go. And honestly, the lyrics are pretty powerful at times. Just the empowering self-love that kind of comes from some of the pain that heartbreaks can ensue. But anyway, move on to this purpose. This is probably the strongest part of the song. Like I was saying before, it talks a lot about self-worth and growth and pain and loving yourself through hard times, especially breakups, and how you could learn from these things. Honestly, there's also a little bit of a weird tone that came off to me. I don't know if other people have experienced this, but for me, it's a little bit of this self-love thing that kind of turns into just being cold. Saying thank you next is kind of like that guy was just nothing, or just something to better yourself. Kind of seems a little bit selfish or cold at times, which I don't know. Is that just me? I don't know. It seems a little bit weird to me at times. Anyway, we'll go on to the sound. Oh, I haven't gone over what the scores are. It's nothing crazy. I talked about how the sound is really simple. She has a really nice voice, but I feel like she doesn't use it as well, at least in this song, as she probably could. Overall, it's pretty smooth and simple as far as the notes in her vocals go. The other sounds I could care less about. Anyway, 2.5 for sound. Moving on to the average, we have 4.375. Very good. That's it. That is the first episode of Song Study. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave suggestions for more videos down in the comments below. But I enjoyed doing this. I hope that you did too. If you did, leave a like on the video. Show some support. Go ahead and subscribe, because I do plan on making more of these, at least trying out a few more. That's it for me today. See you later.